Call to order the New Kent County Board of Supervisors, July 27, 2022 meeting to order. Stanger, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Evelyn?
Here.
Mr. Tiller?
Here.
Ms. Page?
Here.
Mr. Steers?
Here.
Mr. Lockwood?
Here.
All right. Morning, fellow board members. Good morning. Welcome, everyone in attendance this morning. First item on our agenda today is discussion with representatives from New Kent Solar Interjects.
Right here at the table.
Would you rather use the podium?
Okay, great. Thanks, Rodney. Good morning, board members. Thank
Good
you
morning.
You can have a seat if you want to turn your mic on. Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
You're fine.
Somebody remember to turn that mic on.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, good morning. My name is Ali Ondash. I am a project developer with Energix Renewables. Thank you all for having us here. We're really happy to talk to you. To my left, I have Scott. He is with Gentry Lock, and he will be able to talk about our siting agreement a little bit more in depth. So when time comes to him, I'm going to flip it over to Scott to talk. So a little bit about Energix and about our project. We are one of the leading solar companies in the Commonwealth with our headquarters in Arlington, Virginia. We have 8 operational projects, 6 under construction this year, and many more in different stages of development. Something that really sets Energix apart from some other solar companies is that we are the long-term owners and operators of our site. So what that means is that we site, develop, construct, own, and operate the project. So, some other companies may seek a conditional use approval and sell that off to another developer. Energix does not do that. We are here, well, not here physically today, but we will be in front of you seeking conditional use approval in a few weeks. And then in a few years, we're still going to be the same people around. So we're part of the project through its entire life cycle, which makes us really great partners in the county. We want to be part of the community, talk to the residents, the neighbors. We want to be integrated within New Kent County. And another aspect to Energix is that we have a Buy American policy. So we have a strategic partnership with a company called First Solar. They are a panel manufacturer with their headquarters in Arizona and manufacturing and recycling plant in Ohio. So that means that we procure the vast majority of our equipment right here in America. We produce American jobs, we further the American economy, and First Solar also has a robust recycling program, which I know has been on the minds of a few different counties about recycling. There's a landfill right across from the proposed solar site, and with our partnership with First Solar, these panels will not end up in that landfill. They will be recycled properly at the end of its life cycle. A little bit about New Kent Solar. It's a 20 megawatt project which has enough power to enough energy to power approximately 3,200 homes annually, and it is on the it's owned by SPF Investments with Mr. Shaya here to represent the landowner. The total acreage for both parcels is 472 acres, but arrays will only be put on 200 of those acres. The rest of that will be used for setbacks, vegetative buffers, pollinator plants, wetland protection, historical resource areas. We've also partnered with a local apiarist who conveniently lives right across from our site to place hives on the parcels to encourage pollinating. The New Kent Solar will generate no pollution, noise, or traffic after construction. Myself and a colleague went door to door to all of the residents along Olivet Church Road, as well as adjacent landowners, to speak with them, and a lot of them had remarked that they love the quietness of the community. It's a nice, pristine area. It's beautiful, and New Kent Solar will be a great addition to that community without placing any additional strain on infrastructure like schools, first responders, roads, water, or sewer. Like I mentioned earlier, New Kent Solar has a useful lifespan of up to 35 years, and once the site is decommissioned, that includes the removal of all above ground and below ground equipment. and all of the equipment will be taken off and reseeded with local grass mixes. And just briefly, that solar projects are a great way for localities to preserve the land for future uses while also generating revenue for landowners. So we'll get into the finances in a little bit, but just to briefly touch on it, the solar site will generate $2.5 million in additional revenues for the county. Okay, just some industrial use obstacles for these parcels. These parcels are zoned industrial, but it's not ready as it is now for industrial development. I know there is water and sewage to the park, but there's no direct access to these parcels. And luckily, solar facility will not require water or sewage, so those lines will not have to be extended. The parcels are also difficult to access. To cross Shimano Creek to the west of the parcels, it's requiring a $1.8 million investment to cross those wetlands, to upgrade the existing road, making it suitable for industrial traffic, and like I said, to cross Shimano Creek. And the parcels are not located near electrical lines that are suitable for high load service. So any industry that would like to move into the area would not have access to these high powered electrical lines. With the addition of New Kent Solar, Energix is making a $6.5 million investment in upgrading 4.6 miles of that circuit to make it suitable to handle the load from New Kent Solar. So with the upgrades to the planned circuit, this means that businesses along that route will be able to utilize the increased load service. The route for these upgrades, as you can see on the map, takes over a portion of the existing circuit along Townsend Road and Boulevard Trail, It goes down Route 60 and then up all of it Church Road. So this will provide the entire town of Providence Forge with an upgraded circuit at no cost to the businesses, taxpayers, or county. Very brief update or background in taxes, and apologies if you're all familiar with this, just to kind of give an overview. In 2020, the Virginia legislature passed House Bill 1131 that allowed counties in the Commonwealth 2 options to generate revenues from utility-scale solar developments. So the default option is for localities to levy M&T real estate tax on the capital investments. So that's if you don't do anything, that's the default option for the localities. The second option is a locality may adopt an ordinance to replace the M&T with a revenue share arrangement. So under a revenue share model, localities receive income from solar facilities at a flat rate in dollars per megawatt. And the side-by-side comparison of that is the M&T is calculated as a percentage of the assessed value of the capital investments made. It's eligible for an 80, 70, 60 exemption, dependent on different factors, including the size of a solar facility and when we apply for an interconnect agreement. And it's also subject to county and SCC depreciation depending on the facility size or the ownership. That's M&T. With revenue share, localities can adopt an ordinance and assess up to $1,400 per megawatt of the facility. So it's a 20 megawatt facility, $1,400. And then starting July 1st of 26, the revenue share assessment increases by 10% every 5 years. And something that's important to note with revenue share is that it must be adopted through an ordinance. To my understanding, the county has not adopted a revenue share ordinance yet. So Energix is willing to put that as part of our siting agreement, that we would pay the revenue share amount regardless of whether or not New Kent County has that revenue share ordinance in place. So regardless of whether New Kent County pursues an M&T or revenue share, it can participate in a siting agreement if it's proposed by the developer, which you all know we have proposed a siting agreement. So Scott, I'm going to let you take this over.
Good morning, Scott Foster with Gentry Lock in Richmond. I serve as permitting counsel for Energix. Sorry, lost one. You want to do that?
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. I want to talk to you a little bit about the background on the siting agreement. As Ali just detailed, solar facilities are subject to significant exemptions from local M&T tax. So the development community was coming to localities with solar projects, and the localities were saying, guys, this isn't much of a value proposition for us. So to solve that problem, developers and local governments were entering into what we were referring to as voluntary payment agreements, which was a payment to pay some obligation beyond their statutory tax obligation as part of the local permit approval. While that was working, it wasn't the best vehicle for getting money from developers to localities to make solar a true economic development proposition. Realizing that problem, our office worked with Tom Swartzwelder, the county manager in King and Queen, to develop this siting agreement concept. It's based on the old concept associated with landfill siting agreements, where the developer and the locality can negotiate an agreement that really wraps around your conditional use or special use permit approval and houses the economic development portion of the project. This has taken off in Virginia. It has become a matter of course when we submit an application for a solar facility to also propose a siting agreement. When it's acting as the vehicle for that, the additional funds beyond your statutory tax obligation, it really frees up a locality to be creative with that money, and the developer to work with the county, engage in a conversation, figure out what your immediate needs are, and direct that money as you all see fit. We've been, in certain cases, extremely specific. In King and Queen, we were able to take care of a significant portion of their VATI match for local broadband. In Sussex County, we bought a fire truck and I believe it was a fire tanker in addition to proposing some additional money. So really the world is your oyster as to what you do with this money. The nice thing that I really like is it allows us to engage in a conversation with the locality about what your priorities and needs are, and we've already started that conversation with Rodney and Brendan in discussing the value proposition with Interjex and the really the financial bandwidth that this project can hold. Because this is an agreement that wraps around the conditional or special use permit, and because it guarantees those payments over a period of time, it can be used to secure anticipation bonds. So we've worked with localities to make sure that this document can be used as a financing instrument, so that say a project will pay X million dollars over a certain period of years, you can reduce that to present value and get a bond for that amount today, securing that bond with the revenues from the siting agreement. It's just an additional tool. The other thing it does, and this helps both developers and localities, is there's language in the siting agreement legislation that allows the siting agreement to contain terms that conflict with the local zoning ordinance. So say hypothetically the project can't comply with some provision of your ordinance. You can put a provision in the siting agreement that addresses that prevents you all from having to go through the zoning text amendment process and potentially waive an important part of your ordinance, but allow projects to move forward. This project is in complete compliance with your ordinance, so we don't have to worry about that, but that's just a tool that's out there. I think that's about it. I'm happy to have any of your all's questions. We're excited about this because it's really changed the game for solar and helped localities see solar as economic development. It's a really nice tool and sets up a good conversation between the development community and localities.
I'm going to finish our presentation, and then if it's okay, we'll do questions. Just a quick fiscal slide just to show you. So for the current land use, the county stands to gain about $587,000 over the next 35 years with just the landowner paying real estate taxes. With the addition of the M&T tax that I had talked about before, it jumps up to about $1.9 million. And then the revenue share that would be adopted through our siting agreement is $3.168 million. So all in all, the county stands to collect about $2.5 million more compared to real estate taxes alone over the next 35 years. And this is a year-by-year breakdown. We don't have to go by it every year, but as you can see, without the solar project, the tax revenue or the taxes each year are just shy of $17,000. You see the addition per year, so it ranges from anywhere from $58,000 a year upwards of $85,000 additional a year.
I'm going to slide back to that last
Sure.
slide. Sorry. Sorry. There you go.
Nope. I don't know how to get
My
back.
bad. Can you use the scroll?
Yes.
There you go.
Okay.
So one thing to point out here is, as Ally mentioned, in the siting agreement, we've proposed to pay New Kent in any given year the greater of whatever the M&T obligation would be, or the equivalent of revenue share. So that takes care of your all's need to adopt a local ordinance. If you didn't want to, we're volunteering that. And as you can see here in year one, initially, Interjex has proposed a upfront voluntary payment of $100,000 paid within 6 months of commercial operation of the project. That's an example of how we're cycling these additional payments through the siting agreement and memorializing this for moving forward.
Great, thanks, Scott. And just in conclusion, to wrap up the presentation, like I mentioned at the beginning, we're the long-term owner of our sites. You know, we're really dedicated to the neighborhood. We've worked with the Chamber of Commerce. We've talked to local businesses, all the residents around. We're really trying to integrate ourselves within the county and within the community. The generation from the solar site for taxes, about $3.16 million with the revenue share. And the numerous financial and land use benefits will make the New Kent Solar a quiet revenue generating operation that will provide domestic energy produced with domestic panels, preserving the land for future use. And like I had mentioned, we use First Solar, a US-based solar manufacturer, for the procurement of all of our panels. So with that, that's our presentation, and we would love to take questions.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lockwood?
do y'all have I see where you've got the land laid out on the map and all that stuff. Do you have a slide or anything that shows the solar array on that piece of property for setbacks and RPAs and all that?
I currently do not have one now. We can provide that when we go through the site plan, and I believe we can show something at our next meeting. We just don't have anything in this presentation
Okay.
right now.
I'd like to see that.
Sure. I also believe it was part of our conditional use submittal, which I do have with me, and I can show you.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Page?
so you're acquiring 472 acres of industrial property, and you're going to use 200 acres.
Yes, the 200 acres will be for the solar panels. There is that Shimano Creek to the west has a pretty extensive wetland buffer that we need to stay out of. So counting for that, and then per the ordinance, the 100-foot setback from property lines and right-of-way, that accounts for a majority of the other unused acreage.
And you talked to the residents on Oliver Church Road.
We did talk to the residents, yes.
So with this new revenue sharing, it's $1,400 per megawatt, and you're proposing a 20 megawatt. So that's my $28,000 a year on the initial revenue sharing.
You've got it blended in here with the real estate increases in real estate taxes, but yes, correct.
So that's works out $980,000 over 35 years. You take out the $525,000, it puts us back down to $455,000. I'd like to see the breakdown of the machinery and tools that's going to make up the other 2.2. I mean, it's kind of all blended in there, but I'd like to see the breakdown of that.
Sure, I can provide that.
And also, I'd like to see the breakdown on how you came up with the $1.8 million for the road.
Sure.
Anybody else have anything? Mr. Steers?
Allie, first of all, I apologize. I got a message from you late yesterday that you wanted to meet yesterday, and I said, that ain't going to happen.
Oh my gosh, that's no problem.
I apologize. One question I have is for the construction of the proposed solar farm, is that going to be the entrance and exit off of Olivet Church Road?
Yes, the entrance and exit will be up Olivet Church.
And you know that is a terrible, terrible two-lane, windy little curvy road.
Yes, I've been on there many
It's
times.
very dangerous. You know, you can't even have two vehicles hardly pass each other. And another question is, what's the time frame on from the beginning of construction to the ending of the construction?
Sure, the construction takes about 6 months. It would be during construction hours only. Average, you would have about 7 to 8 trucks going in and out of the site. So it takes about 6 months, and we aren't projecting any sort of groundbreaking until late next year, if all goes well. That's just estimates.
Okay. Thank you.
And as a matter of course, in most of these permits, we're working with localities to ensure that any damage to the road, crushed shoulders and whatnot, is taken care of. And in a lot of situations, we'll post a bond to that effect and work with VDOT, so that's rectified as quickly as possible. So we're used to putting solar on roads that are probably substandard built initially, and then taking responsibility if anything happens.
Thanks for that. Would you consider widening the road? Maybe
that's a great question.
From 60 to 64, just that section?
Yeah, that's
Just that section.
Just that section.
That's beyond my ability to commit to. So.
Well, don't look at me, Ron. I don't believe we would. We're coming in from the south. We can't cross the bridge to the north. No, never mind.
Where's the bridge?
No, I'm sorry. I'm getting confused here.
There's no bridge between.
No, there's no bridge. No.
Yeah. See,
All right.
Probably going to be easement issues.
My name is Dominica Sink. I'm with Energix. I work with Ali on this project. So just wanted to add to your concerns. We will work with VDOT to make sure that road is safe. So flagger, any signage, we'll make sure that road is safe. As for widening the road, as mentioned, we can't commit to that. It's VDOT's right-of-way, but we're more than happy to make sure that we work on any strategies to make sure that the road will be safe. And with our site plan approval, we're going to have a traffic control plan that we'll propose to the county as well.
Okay. Thank you.
I listened to, you said that the power would be for 3,200 homes. Are they 3,200 homes in New Kent?
It would be any home that comes off of the electrical grid, yeah.
I'm sorry?
And homes that feed into that electrical grid will be benefited from this project.
So you don't know if they're homes in New Kent or not?
I believe that they are.
The way I look at it is electrons, once they're on the grid, they're impossible to track. But also the way I look at it is if you're standing in a lake and you pour a bucket of water beside you, odds are you're going to get touched with some of that water that was poured out of that bucket. So to the extent electricity can ever be consumed locally and be tracked, when you're putting power on the grid in a local area, odds are it'll be consumed in that general area. So it's a hard thing to say that it'll exactly who it'll go to because the grid is of the nature that it is.
Okay.
Anybody else? I'm sure we'll be reaching out to you over the next few weeks before you come back with some more questions and comments. So thank you for your presentation.
That would be great. Thank you all. Have a great
Thank
day.
you.
Next item, request to transfer the authority granted in conditional use permit R-03-06 to operate a 260-acre sand and gravel mine on Old River Road from Basic Inc. to Holcomb Mark Inc. Mr. Hathaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Currently, there is a conditional use permit on tax map parcel 12-5, which is the 260-acre sand and gravel. Well, it's a portion of that parcel that consists of 260 acres, sand and gravel mine on Old River Road. There's also a wetlands bank that's not included in this on that property. The conditional use permit that was adopted requires that if the ownership of this operation is to transfer to another entity, then the board would have to approve the authorities and conditions granted in that use permit to transfer to the new entity. Therefore, we have a request today. The facility is currently owned by Basic, and they are working with a group called Holcomb to sell the property to Holcomb, who will be the new operator. So Holcomb is requesting that the conditions and authorities granted in the existing use permit be transferred to Holcomb. We do have representatives here. If you have any questions regarding the new company, we have Dan Hoskins from Holcomb here, and we also have Derek Patterson from Basic, I believe, that are here if you have any questions.
Anybody have any questions? So, I mean, this is just a formality we have to go through. And I assume the CUP, it runs with the land, so it'll be running with a new company.
That's correct.
So everything stays the same? Excuse me. Everything stays the same except ownership, right?
That's correct, yes.
So we didn't have any violations or anything that's CUP or anything with Basic, correct?
No, actually, Basic has fulfilled their obligations in the use permit. There were some road improvements that were required on Old River Road, which has been done and completed. There's some maintenance requirements, which they've done a good job maintaining that section of road as well.
I will say I know those Basic trucks at one point they were running 35 miles from where the concrete plant begins out to 249, and they've been doing that for years. So hopefully, I had a lot of complaints. That's my district of the speed of the trucks, but they've been doing a really good job over the last 4 or 5 years. I've not had one complaint, so I hope we can keep that up over the new ownership. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt Resolution R-26-22 approving the transfer of authority containing CUP Resolution R-03-06 to operate a 260-acre sand and gravel mine on Old River Road from Basic, Inc. to Holcomb, Inc.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Is there any other discussion? Ms. Stanger, will you poll the members, please?
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page? Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Motion passes. Next item, Victim Witness Assistance Program Annual Update. Ms. Morrison? Good morning.
Board Chair, board members, Mr. Hathaway, thank you very much for having us this morning. I would like to introduce you to the victim advocate who works alongside me. This is Robert Hensley. He's been with us for about 8 months.
Good morning.
I'd also like to thank Miss Grable from DSS and Sheriff Hathaway. Sheriff. I made you the sheriff. I'm sorry. Sorry. I've given him early retirement, apparently. Sheriff McLaughlin, my apologies for coming and supporting us this morning. I think I'm supposed to use this mouse. This is not going to be pleasant, people. I'm sorry. I think I've met with you more times than enough to explain what we actually do. But we are a unique and important program because we serve all victims of every crime. We're not specific to anything, and we do it from within the criminal justice system. We have a codified responsibility through the Victims' Rights Act, which is 19.2-11.01, and it's our job to make sure that victims and their crimes are brought to the attention of the courts, that they are treated with dignity, respect, and sensitivity, and that their privacy is protected. So those are the basic rights that victims have under the Victims' Rights Act, which is a statewide legislation. The Victims' Bill of Rights is meaningful because there are only two groups of people who are mandated by law to give victims their rights. One of those is law enforcement, and the other one is us underneath the umbrella of the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office. We work with victims right from the occurrence of the crime, and because of the way that we receive police reports, we literally pick victims up the day after the crime has occurred, or if law enforcement has contacted us via text, we will work with that victim sitting from home if we have to. We work with them through that day, all the way through the court process, and if victims require follow-up, we do that as well. The Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services awards grants to support victim witness programs with the use of federal and state funds. The award is awarded to New Kent County, and New Kent County disperses it, manages it, and controls it. The overall success of our program relies on Mr. Hathaway's authorization of the application and then requesting continued funding depending on the success of the program. The grants are supported by VOCA, which is the Victims of Crime Act, the Crime Victims Fund, and state general funds. At the moment, we are receiving federal funds and special state funds. And this fund is provided to the county and requires procurement and appropriation. So this grant is not ours, it's the county's. It belongs to the county. The Crime Victim Witness Fund receives $3 charged to all offenders in the county who go through conviction in court. Federal offenders generate assessments, and in this way the offenders pay some of our costs, which I think is a very good thing. So the amount of money we get depends on how much DCJS has got. At this present time, DCJS is paying us from funds that were received in 2019. At this time, and for the last few years, we've had level funding, and there's no increase going to happen this year either. Because of the decline of federal funds, and those federal funds come from fines from the major companies who are fined. A couple of years ago, there were many, many fines for white-collar crimes, white-collar businesses, and our funds started to look really, really good. But then as the last few years have happened, there have not been any fines, and our funds, our levels have been reduced. So we're actually funding level this year back to 2021, but our grant has not been increased. In fact, victim witness grants across the state have not been increased or received further funding since about 2018 was the last time we received an increase. So our program is celebrating 25 years. We've been around since 1997. Mr. Gregory and the Commonwealth's attorney from Charles City got together and started this program. The Commonwealth's attorney sponsors us, and that's the same for many victim witness programs throughout the state. It's usually sponsored by the Commonwealth attorney, but also by sheriff's offices. Here, it's the CA's office. There's the two of us, and we do all the work in this county. Our grant award is 97,633, and that's important when we get to a couple of other slides. New Kent contributes $5,000 in funds for supplemental salary for staff. We have just finished our statistics, and we've had the highest year that we've ever had at 510 victims. These are direct service victims, which means that we work with them right from the start of the crime all the way through court. So in addition to serving Charles City victims, this includes a number of crimes that actually occur here in New Kent, but the victims might live outside of New Kent. We still work with them because those crimes have occurred here. We've worked with 35 direct service witnesses, and those are people who haven't been the victim but who are coming to court to testify. We lead them through it as well. That restitution number, the offenders are ordered to pay that. It doesn't come to us, it goes directly to the victims. And that's on the low end. That's only on the ones that we've actually written the paperwork up for. And then the Virginia Victims Fund claim has paid out $3,600 this year, and we have 10 claims waiting, which means there are 10 victims who are waiting for their medical bills to be paid, or counseling, or funerals, or whatever that fund pays for. We access that fund directly, and then that money goes straight to the victims. That money is then charged back to the offenders during sentencing at the end of their case. So they will have to pay that money back to the Virginia Victims Fund. I just took the top 3 out of each of our quarters to show you how busy we are. Domestic violence is off the charts. I think I've told you that before. Assault charges, which include abduction, maiming, hit and run, and protective orders that are not family related, and thefts, of course. Identity theft is quite high, petty and grand theft as well. So you can see those numbers. The other topic is trespass, contributing to the delinquency of a minor, and destruction. So very busy on domestic violence this year, as usual, I think. So I wanted to have a look at similar programs. These programs are the ones that actually responded to me. I did ask other victim witness programs. I asked DCJS to give us numbers. You can see that King William receives more of a budget than we do. That is their budget from DCJS without the input from the county. And that's because their program started after hours. When that program started, the amount that they got was higher than the amount that we started with. Their numbers are slightly lower than ours. They do represent the full-time and part-time staff, so close to what we do. Gloucester County's budget is higher. They have only served 252 clients, and I was kind of shocked about that. I contacted them, and those numbers are what they produced this year. They have 2 full-time staff, 1 part-time. I put in Allegheny, Bath, and Highland because she had the decency to respond to me. Even though their budget is quite high, they don't serve that many more clients than we do. They have served 250 more clients, but they have 3 full-time and a part-time staff. And then Goochland is on the other end, the low end. And when I talked to the sheriff about this, their crime numbers are similar to New Kent's, but they're not serving anywhere near as the same victims. And that could be for many reasons, but they only have 2 part-time staff in there. So I wanted you to just know the 510 that we're serving, we are way above what other programs are serving with extra staff. Thankfully, we use interns in our program thanks to Rappahannock College, VCU, JMU offer us volunteers. We have to provide volunteers because our grant says so. And we had a fabulous intern who contributed 263 hours to us, and DCJS costs that out at $28.54 an hour. So it's completely, it's excellent that they can do that for us. We serve 510 victims, and it costs less than 6 offenders to serve all these people in town. And those numbers are from Sheriff McLaughlin. This is what the victims are served by. And I believe I gave you the booklet, which is the Victims' Rights Act. Those are their rights. There's no comeback if we don't give them it, except it doesn't look good to New Kent County if we don't serve victims properly. And these are their rights. They are entitled to these, and we make sure that they get these rights, every single person we serve. These are the partners that we have, and social services and the sheriff's office are the ones that we interact with every day. We share information, we assist each other with what victims are saying, we accompany victims to each other's meetings, and then we work together to try and give these victims an overall service that is outstanding and helps them. But these are all the people that we work with within the county. These are some of the committees that we go to, we attend, and we serve on. And this is good because whenever we need help from someone, we then know who to contact for that victim. And that's the end of my presentation. I'm hoping you've got some questions that I can help answer.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions?
One,
Ms. Tiller?
I know you said New Kent County contributed to $5,000. Does Charles City also contribute?
Not at all, sir. I went to them this year with the help of Miss Page and asked for $20,000 and they didn't give me anything. So for 25 years, Charles City has not contributed to this program. I have discussed that with DCJS about applying for some separate funding that would just go for them. But out of those 510, only 63 victims were Charles City. It's not that Charles City doesn't have any crime, it's just that's what was given to us this year.
Yeah.
I know.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to, sir, welcome you to New Kent, and to staff, and also to thank both of you for all that you do.
Thank you, Ms. Page.
Anybody else? Thank you for your presentation, and thanks for all you do with short-staffed. I know it's a special job. It takes a special person, so thank you for what you all do.
Thank you so much.
Next item, camera speed monitoring and enforcement in highway work zones and school crossing zones. Mr. Hathaway?
Thank
And
you,
Mr.
Mr.
McLaughlin,
Chairman, members
Sheriff.
of the board. I'm going to call the sheriff up.
See, you talk about retirement, we get a new sheriff in town. We don't play around.
I'm getting ready to take the badge off.
I think it's super good. Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman, board members, Mr. Hathaway, the esteemed county attorney. Well, I wasn't going to mention, I saw him kick over a cup of coffee on his way in, stain the carpet. Cleaning services will be billing you for that, sir. Thank you for the time. We're here to discuss this morning with you our proposed ordinance for New Kent County. I believe Mr. Hathaway has probably provided that ordinance proposal to you. What we are looking to address, and I'll ask Greg to chime in, but looking at the adoption of an ordinance under state code that would allow New Kent County the option of using photo enforcement in school zones and in work zones. Right now, our primary focus would be in school zones. We have done through with Greg's assistance, traffic surveys in our existing school zone areas and their proposed school zone area for Quinton Elementary. We know we have an issue there. We just frankly don't have the manpower to put someone in running radar in each of the school zones. This program would require the adoption of an ordinance here in the county to allow it, but the program itself, and I'll ask Greg to go more in detail, would not be any cost to the county of New Kent.
The company, if we signed with them and they do have a current procurement cooperative agreement in the Commonwealth of Virginia, we could sign on with them after and if the ordinance is adopted, move forward with the establishment of photo enforcement cameras in the school zones that are appropriate. There would be a plan in place for the issuance of citations for violations 11 miles or more over the posted speed limit. That's set by state code so that there are no errors in technology that cause infractions. The citations would be issued by the company here under the agreement with New Kent County by mail. We would have the opportunity to review all of the citations and the attached video images to make a decision as to whether we wanted to proceed with citations being issued. That's simply so that we don't issue citations to school buses, county vehicles, that type of thing that may be like if we had fire unit responding through the school zone with lights and siren to an emergency call, why would we want to send them a citation?
Board members.
I believe that would fall under the all other category, sir. And if this is put into process, the options for the individuals identified as offenders, truly the vehicle, license plate, and owner information identified as an offender would receive a citation in the mail telling them the date, time, the vehicle identified, and they could prepay it. If they decide they want to fight the citation, we would then review each of these and prepare for a court case. However, the state statute does say that if they fight it, they need to come to court with a signed affidavit saying who the operator of the car was at the time of the violation, so that then that case can be dismissed against them and action can be taken against the driver of the vehicle. It's if I'm not mistaken, it's basically a civil fine with no attachment of enforcement on driving records, unless, of course, you come to court and then there's a court action taken from the bench. So, if I would, Greg Hogston, pronounce it for me.
I've been called a lot worse. It's Hogston.
Okay.
H-O-G-S-T-O.
Well, it could be Sheriff Hathaway, so.
I'll give you just a quick overview of who we are. My name is Greg Hogston, and I came on board with Blue Line Solutions last year. I just retired with 25 years of law enforcement in Southwest Virginia and Smith, Washington, and the city of Bristol. So I've had a passion for law enforcement and traffic safety my whole career. I've went to a lot of traffic accidents that could have been prevented. It's had tragic results to where family members and loved ones have been killed that could have been prevented. And this opportunity presented itself to me, and I took the step of faith in December because this fell right in line with my whole vision of my whole career that I've dedicated 25 years to of traffic safety. And I broadened my scope to where I have the whole Commonwealth of Virginia now instead of just a locality of a city or a town or a county. But our company was started back in 2010 by a gentleman by the name of Mark Hutchinson, who was a former chief deputy of Johnson County, Tennessee Sheriff's Office for years. And then when politics moved in, it moved him out. So that's part of it when we sign on. But he started this company after working with the Tennessee Highway Safety Office in Tennessee. And everyone has seen the program that NHTSA puts out every year. It's called Click It or Ticket. Okay? That's the most successful program that NHTSA has implemented. It's been around since 2000. The owner of our company was working with the Highway Safety Office in Tennessee when this program was rolled out. That was his responsibility to roll out Click It or Ticket to the state of Tennessee and law enforcement personnel at that point in time. But when he left the Governor's Highway Safety Office, he took the Click It or Ticket model and based his company around it, simply because we're a data-driven company. And what we do, Click It or Ticket, we would send law enforcement officers out a couple weeks prior to the enforcement, and we'd do seatbelt surveys. And then after seatbelt surveys were turned into DMV, the commercials on TV, radio ads, TV ads went on. And then after that, we would do our enforcement. After enforcement wave, we would go back and sit in that same intersection and survey 100 vehicles to see if the public information and education and the enforcement activities together caused everyone to wear their seatbelts more often. So when he took this approach, he's like, why come up with a new approach when we can take the click it or ticket model? So we go out, and this is what we do. I met with the sheriff last, I think, November or December, and requested if we could come into New Kent County ourselves and do a 5-day covert speed study in your school zones. In your booklets that I provided you, you've got a copy of each one of your school zones that we did speed study.
We got pictures, ma'am.
Yep. So no, ma'am. That's. No, I had one board member we're dealing with now that we're under contract with. One of the board members said, "Please just go ahead and set me up an account, and I'll just do a direct payment each month to keep it down." But this is what we like to do because that's why our company is called Blue Line Solutions. We provide a solution to the county if there's a problem that's been identified in your school system. And you can see the new school that's under construction, which will be an active school zone in the fall. And we set it up, it's 45 mile an hour speed limit, and we set the times roughly to what they would be when the lights are put up and flashing during the day and the reduced zone. You can see you had 25,031 vehicles come through that school zone in 5 days, from 7 to 4. And you had 14,417 violations at 11 and above. And we cannot even start to identify a violation until it hits that threshold by state code at 11. We did some of the other schools. One of them, the combined school, had 5,800 some vehicles, 93 violations at 11 and above. And George Watkins Elementary School had 299 violations and 10,419 vehicles. So at that point in time, you take the data, and if you wind up looking at our program, you like it. What we do is after the public information and education program, which is the most important component to this whole program, you've got a target audience of New Kent County, and we need to educate all the citizens, all the school board members, our local governing body, and we partner with the school board. We do social media posts, we do everything to educate everyone prior to the program. And once that happens, and a 30-day warning phase, we go back out and do another speed study to see if the public information and education is working effectively. So what we try to do is from the baseline survey, we try to drive the numbers down 60 to 80% before the first actual live summons is written. And then 90 days after the program is actually live in your school system with a fixed location, we do a follow-up study. And from Louisiana, Georgia, Tennessee, Iowa, and Virginia, and a couple of other states that we're working in, across the board, we have a 90 to a 92% reduction within the first 6 to 9 months after our program goes live. So right off of the bat, when people hear the word photo speed, they think of it's a revenue generator. That's why the locality is trying to do it. That's why we take this approach, because we take the baseline numbers, and with public information and education and the warning phase, we drop down the numbers before we even start. If we were all about just making money for a jurisdiction, you'd come in, do your studies, find out where your highest numbers were, and just put the cameras up and just let it roll. But our whole thing is to educate the public, educate the school system, educate the motorists going through the school zones to slow down. And what we do, we go one extra step. You see the school zone markings either on the road or the post. You see the flashers that if it's reduced, and when you go past the flashers, we put up, at no charge to the locality, a radar feedback sign. So as you're approaching that, you get a visual cue saying, hey, I'm speeding, I need to slow down. The actual enforcement is inside of that. So you've got actually 3. You've got a posted speed limit sign, a school zone, the flashing lights, a radar feedback sign, and then the LiDAR enforcement tool there. So if you go through a school zone and you wind up getting a photo speed enforcement violation, you went through so many visible cues that you know at that point in time. So that's why our mission is to drive down the numbers to make it safer. And here's the thing, in general, South Fulton, Georgia, they did a survey after they were up and live for a year. They had 25,000 fewer vehicles traveling through the school zones who took an alternate route, who didn't have anything to do with the schools. They were just driving from point A to point B through that school zone. They chose an alternate route just to avoid the enforcement, which made the school zone safer. You know, and I tell people all the time, I would rather be proactive than reactive. And that's what we're here for, is just to provide you a solution. And there is absolutely zero risk to the locality. We put all the money, all the infrastructure, the equipment in at no cost to the locality by code. And this is by code. We're a non-revenue share state. So by code, we have to charge a processing fee per violation. It's processed out the door. We charge $15 per violation, $85 if the board chooses to set the civil fine at $100 for a school zone. The board or the county would receive $85 per violation back at that point in time. And that is after the sheriff has actually approved, looked at all the summonses, make sure we already scrub them. When they get it takes about 10 seconds to look. The registration matches the vehicle. And once it's sent in to us, we handle everything. If there's any non-payment, we handle it through a local collection that does nothing but government collections for localities and municipalities. So the only thing that the county has invested in this program is the time it takes to review the violations when they're sent to them. So,
if I may, I have spoken with the superintendent of schools, who has in fact had conversations with the school board. They are wholeheartedly behind this process. The superintendent sat in at one of our explanation meetings, was impressed, and we're moving forward. As a requirement through VDOT, I had to choose my words appropriately. We have a commitment from them at the Quinton Elementary school zone to keep that at a 25-mile-an-hour school zone speed limit. They originally had set it at 35. Again, this is purely for traffic safety, has nothing to do with revenue. It has to do with reducing motor vehicle crashes, injuries, deaths, and property damage. But at 35 miles an hour, that was going to be a problem generator. VDOT required, as a part of the agreement, to put it at 25 at Quinton Elementary, that we enforce school zones. My problem is we do that already. That's part of our job. They also required yearly reports on that school zone, violations, surveys, to maintain that at a 25-mile zone. This process would allow us to do this in each of our school zones, not just for the Quinton Elementary, but certainly with the public education, the public awareness, the social media we're going forward with, if approved prior to enforcement actions. If you come through with a violation, you've earned it. We're going to do our best to work through. And again, nothing says that if I see that citation or one of our staff sees that citation that we have to move forward with it. We can always discuss it and move on from there. It gives us the option. The option will probably only be given to certain case-by-case basis. Again, emergency vehicles, that type thing. So if you have any questions, we're certainly here, but the ordinance is before you in proposed form, and we'll be happy to address any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Lockwood?
What is the distance between the radar feedback sign and the actual violation zone?
well, that's going to be depending upon the layout of the terrain of the school zone. It's usually, I would say, 50 to 100 feet, somewhere in that area there, maybe a little further.
Are you
But
asking
that
for a
is just,
friend?
that is just, it's really depending upon how the layout goes and the site plan is set and the site distance and everything. That would be something that would be determined once we actually start the permitting process with VDOT, because we have to obtain land use permits unless they let us use existing posts, just for safety and that. So that's something I can't give you a definite answer on, because it could vary from school zone to school zone. But we want you to have ample time to to slow down, but that's a last cue, last warning before you actually get into the heart of the school.
Because I have been
I knew it.
photographed, and I have no problem with. To me, it's a case of, if there's a police officer running radar, I have the visual cue most of the time to see somebody, and it gives me a chance to check my speed. It gives me a chance to self-correct before a violation. Right. So when you see a radar feedback sign, it gives you the same opportunity to just take a glance at the speedometer instead of just going with the flow and see if you're in fact speeding like it's telling you. So I'm in favor of something like this being used as a deterrent to stop, to get people to pay attention, because that's the biggest problem that we have these days. And as long as there's ample time, ample space for someone to actually get that feedback and respond before there's a violation, yeah. I would say that works well.
Here you go, right here. Is that you?
No, that's not.
Okay.
That's my other car.
Well, and I agree wholeheartedly with you on that. Right before I retired, we did a speed study for the city of Bristol, and we presented that. And one of their schools had over 5,000 some violations in 1 week. And when I sat down to do an educational meeting with the board and school board members, they were saying, I was like, this speed study was done with a school resource officer car parked in front of the school in plain sight. Also the morning, because he was back in the back unloading the children from the buses and the parent line. The speed study was taken with an officer present sitting across the road with their blue lights going on during the time the speed limit dropped and the flashers were going on. And we reported over 5,000 violations, exactly like you said, even with an emergency vehicle with their equipment activated inside of the school zone. So, some people pay attention, some don't. Most of the ones who do not pay attention through that time frame have not got a child to drop off or any type of business to the school. It's just a fastest way of travel from point A to point B. But I agree with you wholeheartedly. That's why we do that, to give that last visual cue before you get into the heart of that school zone to where, something detrimental could happen.
Mr. Lockwood, also, I probably should have said this, Greg and his company will be working with VDOT prior to the installation to meet all their permit requirements. They'll be taking care of that, but certainly establishing the warning zones prior to the actual enforcement zone should have anywhere from 3 to 5 opportunities to recognize that you're entering a school zone and that enforcement is an option prior to the actual enforcement action, in addition to the public information source.
And also, this is supposed to include work zones at some point.
Yes, sir.
So I would imagine that it would require some temporary setup for work zones as opposed to stationary.
Yes, sir. And for the work zones, we have 2 applications for that. It's better suited for that because the fixed locations where you have ever-changing road environment, lane changes, there's 2 options. We have a portable trailer, if that would be a locality's choice. Most localities that we have contracts with right now are using what we call the hybrid method, which is no different than a handheld LiDAR used device. That's all we use is laser. We do not use radar because it is vehicle specific. There's no guessing on which vehicle it is, but the handheld LiDAR unit allows an officer to work in a work zone instead of having to interject themselves into that environment, whether you've got no shoulders or anything like that. They can use the photo enforcement option there. If it's an egregious violation, say 25 or 30 over, at that point in time, if they take the reading, they can go pull that vehicle over, handle it under state code, send us an email, we'll pull the abstract out to where there's no summons issued for that violation, but we will send this agency a metadata packet which will have all the photos, all the calibration records and everything of the device, and they can handle it through the state courts to where that would be a reckless driving charge by code with a fine up to $2,500. So that's what that is.
Okay. So and all these fines are civil fines. They're not going on your driving record and all that.
We have,
unless you choose to do so. Is that the way I'm hearing it?
Unless the operator chooses to come to court with it.
Okay. So otherwise, if they receive a fine, it's just a civil fine. There's no violation rate or stated or anything. Okay.
What happens if you catch them going like 75 miles an hour or something through there?
Then we will probably take that on a case-by-case basis in a different situation.
Yes.
With the data package coming to us for enforcement from there. Our intent at this point is only for school zones, not for work zones. Not saying that in the future that could not be expanded upon, but our main concern at this point is traffic safety in our school zones.
And then one more, if I may. I'm sorry.
Mr. Lockwood?
This is only allowed by state code in work zones and school zones, correct?
2 places, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Only that.
We could not use it in Eltham Hamlet, sir.
Ms. Page?
So, 2 quick questions.
Yes, ma'am.
How long would your contract be with the county? And I'm thinking you would have like 3 machines.
Yes, okay, with the contract with the county. Okay, since it's on the term with the sheriff, every contract that we have entered into with a sheriff's office at this point in time, where they are mid-term, or whatever it is, it would be a 2-year contract. When everything's up and running, next sheriff comes into office, he would at that point in time enter into a 4-year contract based upon his term.
Okay.
Yeah, we entered that with county and talked with the county administrator, the county attorney, and where it's a constitutional office and the new sheriff comes in, you can't hold the new sheriff binding to the old contract. So we talked with our legal and we're running in consecutive times with the current sheriff's term. And what was your other part of your question? Well, what it would be if each school zone, based upon the speed study to see if it qualifies for the actual upright fixed location, which these would, it would be one on each end because it would be getting approaching traffic coming in. Now, if it is used with the LiDAR, it's wherever the officer wants to sit within that school zone and utilize that, the handheld.
Ms. Steers, you have something?
Yes, sir. So it's my understanding that the machine doesn't trigger, take the picture until it's 11 miles over the speed limit?
That is correct.
So they'd have to be going at least 36 miles an hour?
Yes. Now, they can be programmed, and you would think that school zones across the Commonwealth with VDOT would be very consistent, and they are not in any way, shape, or form. There's actually been some localities that we went in with our permitting team that they've communicated with VDOT, and they've actually had to go back and correct some school zone as far as distance and posting. But other than that, what was the main point of your question? I'm sorry.
It's that they wouldn't be ticketed unless they were going 11 miles over the speed.
If it's a 45 zone,
right,
and say from 7:30 to 8:30 it drops to 25,
right,
it would be 36 and above.
Right.
Once the lights go off, it goes back up to the normal speed limit, and the threshold goes to 46 or 56 in the 45.
And until the public gets acclimated to this new program, would you be sending any just warnings?
First 30 days, or if the sheriff wants to go longer,
okay,
that is completely up to the jurisdiction. But it's standard practice for us and most of the other vendors in this business that they do a 30-day public information education, then a 30-day warning phase, and then they go live. So you've got about 60 days of technical warnings and education.
And then on the Quentin Elementary School, would your laser lights be set up on 249 or over on Quaker Road?
249. New Kent Highway.
Why not Quaker Road? That's where the majority of the traffic's going to be going in and out.
That's good. All the bus traffic will be going in
249.
249.
That's all.
The individual traffic will come in the back. However, VDOT has, to my understanding, has not considered Quaker Road as a school zone posting. It's still as a secondary roadway.
I don't think your school buses are going to be speeding.
Well, no, but the vehicles that are coming through while they're trying to make the turns could very well be, in addition to the manpower out directing traffic in and out. So.
Right. Okay.
And then that secondary road, based upon the board's request, could be reassessed by VDOT upon your request to them to see if they would consider.
You obviously don't know VDOT.
Well, very well. Very well. I've dealt with them for years. So.
Carry on, Sheriff Joe. All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Ms. Tiller?
So with Quentin Elementary School, then for the Quaker Road side, like you said, we'd need VDOT to lower the speed limit back there, so it would be 25 all the time anyway.
That would be my recommendation. We have been in discussions multiple times with VDOT. I have to say publicly, the relationship with VDOT has improved of recent. We have become more amenable and cooperative, so we are in fact in discussions with concerns about the speed limit there on Quaker, as well as the road condition to include width and surface treatments.
All right, next question then, back to the school zones. So during the summer, would you still be ticketed for driving through a school zone? So it's just during the school year itself, when schools are open?
I believe the code has an understanding that the school board sets the time for what's considered a school zone, and they would, by definition, make that decision. My anticipated logic at this point would be that it would only be during the active school year, their normal function times, probably an hour and a half, 2 hours in the morning, same in the afternoon, and most likely not during the summer months. But that, again, is under consideration by the school.
Like that, summer school.
Looking at these numbers, because you had it broken down by time as well, it didn't really seem to fluctuate a whole lot from the operating hours of the signs and just during the day.
It is fairly consistent throughout, but it also then would give us the opportunity to see the numbers not during the enforceable school zone, but during the enforceable currently posted speed limit in that section of road.
Once the cameras are up and active, they're continuously catching data, but we only process the data that's captured during specific time zones when schools are in session. Yes. And the code specifically says that any violation captured for photo speed can only be used for photo speed. Now, we have a second platform that comes free with the school zones, is what they call ALPR technology. That's a completely separate analytical platform that the sheriff has access to see those photos in case you have an abduction or some type of incident in the school system that you could use that to have it in time. So, and it usually takes, in reality, about dealing with VDOT and the permitting process, it's about 6 to 12 month task to get all the permits and everything done and the construction done. So it's a very lengthy process to get everything up and running. A lot of work.
Do you have something else?
Yes. And then when you run the tag, what happens when you find out that the driver is a fugitive?
If you're talking on photo speed or...
Yes, I mean, you're going to have the tag number.
Well, that's where the ALPR comes in.
Right.
It can be uploaded with the most hot list from VCIN and NCIC,
right.
Or the sheriff can ingest a wanted fugitive if he has a...
So instead of mailing him a ticket, the sheriff will go visit his house?
He can, yeah, sheriff can do
We would still mail
yes,
it, but it would be registered receipt. You'd have to sign in front of us to take it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I understand. Thanks.
All right, I think we've learned more than we needed to on.
Well, and also, in your packet, sir,
Yeah.
and in yours, I put what they call a PI&E, public information.
Right.
If you could just share it with the other board members when you get a chance, and just let them see that the most important aspect of this program, enforcement is just one aspect, but the most important thing is educating the target audience with the citizens and the motorists who will be using their school zones.
And I do want to say I've met Mark, the owner of the company. He is 100% behind it and said he would be willing to come to the county and do whatever he needed to do. But our entire focus on this is transportation safety.
All right.
Just one more. Just curious, what is the current fine for speeding 11 miles over in a?
You asking for a friend again?
Just
Are you asking for photo speed or?
No, currently, if you were tagged by a
$6
deputy.
per mile for if you're written under state code. Then you're assessed a court processing fee, and then if you're found guilty, you're assessed demerit points through DMV, and it's reported to your insurance. Okay. If this code goes through and it's a civil penalty, which is not intended to go to court, there's no points assessed to your driving record. It's not reported to the DMV or your insurance, and it's a $100 civil fine. It's payable back to the county of New Kent. So.
And other than fees that would be attached to that violation, the county's portion is $85 on a $100
That is what
fine.
our standard processing fee that we charge is $15 per violation, processed and sent out for review.
And if it was currently tagged and taken to court, or just paid the fine on a current violation, not yours, what would the county portion of that ticket be for the same 66 would be
I
the?
believe it's a $5 courthouse maintenance fee and a $3 courthouse or court security fees. The rest would go to the state literary fund.
Are you trying to decide whether
Charitable donation.
Yes, sir. Mr. Lockwood, the actual total court cost is $76 currently, plus $6 for every mile over. So the simple penalty of the $100 would be cheaper than a traditional handwritten summons.
Right.
With
if
no,
they were convicted in court.
and
And
with
no points.
No points.
If the board wishes to move forward, I will be submitting an agenda request for our August 8th meeting for a public hearing to adopt the ordinance that you have in your packet.
I think it's a consensus that. All right. All right. Thanks, Sheriff.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'll take a 5-minute break.
We get tired out.
Yeah. And I mean 5 minutes.
Next item on the agenda, item 5, budget transfers, Assistant Finance Director Maylene.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll go ahead and take this one. This should be a quick one. What you have here is staff closing the fiscal year, FY22 fiscal year. So you'll see a number of transfers, which is basically just balancing department budgets, except for the first 2 items. The first 2 items are FY23 expenditures this year. The first one is actually an oversight during the budget process, that we're asking that funding for fuel and vehicle equipment be added to the FY23 budget for the Commissioner of Revenue's office. I believe we had a spreadsheet error there where it was showing that no funds were requested. Therefore, I propose no funds for that line item, but they actually do need fuel to operate. So the
That's
second,
the 1,150.
yes, that's the 1,150. And the second item is HVAC replacement at the visitor center. We are in the process of replacing that system. We're probably about halfway through, and there is some additional funding. The existing system had failed on us. And it took a little while to get parts in, but we're now in the process of replacing that system.
All right, thank you. What we talked about. Mr. Steers?
Mr. Chairman, if there's no other discussions, I'll make the motion to approve the FY22, FY23 budget transfers as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Steers. Ms. Stanger, will you poll the members?
Ms. Page? Aye. Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Next item, adoption of proclamation honoring Margaret Elise Travers Smith upon the occasion of her 100th birthday. Mr. Lockwood?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had the honor and privilege of attending Mrs. Smith's birthday party on Saturday. She turned 100 on Monday, the 25th, and I was able to read this proclamation for her on her birthday celebration. So I'd like to read it now and have it entered into the record. Proclamation honoring Margaret Elise Travers Smith on the occasion of her 100th birthday. Whereas Margaret Elise Travers Smith was born July 25th, 1922 to Joseph and O.C. Travers, and whereas Mrs. Smith attended the Bark Elementary School and graduated from the New Kent Training School in 1939, and whereas Mrs. Smith was the wife of the late James McKinley Smith and mother of 10 children, including Shirley, triplets James, John, and Joseph, William, Margaret, Bernice, Paul, Robert, and Christopher. The generations of her family have increased with the addition of 42 grandchildren, 28 great-grandchildren, and 5 great-great-grandchildren. Whereas Mrs. Smith is a lifelong member and is known as the mother of Mount Olive Baptist Church, where she has served as the clerk for over 25 years, and whereas Mrs. Smith was a member of the Star of the East and historian of New Kent, and whereas Mrs. Smith worked at Camp Perry, was a school bus driver, and retired from the Quinn Rivers Community Action Agency, and whereas Margaret Elise Travers Smith celebrated her 100th birthday on July 25th, 2022. And now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the New Kent Board of Supervisors on this 27th day of July does hereby applaud and congratulate Margaret Elise Travers Smith upon the glorious occasion of her 100th birthday and wishes her many more birthdays to come. Signed by Rodney Hathaway, Clerk of the Board, and Thomas Evelyn, Chair of the Board. And it made her day. I just would like to thank Wanda and Rodney for getting that together on this page as well, getting that information provided. And also a special thank you to Doris Cheek for really driving it to get it. She received well over the 100 birthday cards that they were hoping to get, and there were a lot of people in the community that contributed that didn't even know her, but really took the time to celebrate her birthday. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lockwood. Next item, Fire Station number 4, lease renewal, Chief Opet.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Today, just bringing to your attention, back in 2017, when we approved the lease that we have on the current building in station or at Inland Lenexa. That was a 5-year contract. It was 3 years with 2 option years. And just to let you know, we are coming up on our last option year out there. We do have an obligation to give them a 60-day notice, so that's why I'm here before you, and just to make sure that you're okay with us moving forward to exercise that lease that will expire October 11th, 2023.
Is everybody okay with that? So we really don't need any motion on that, right? Just a consensus?
Should be.
Any reasonable
Do you?
assumption?
It says no motion necessary, just briefing the board.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm talking to you. I was talking to Brendan. I'm sorry.
Yeah, does the agreement already contemplate a renewal? Yeah, then we're fine. If that was part of the original approved agreement, then we're fine.
I'm talking to Ms. Tiller. I mean, cut you off.
That's all right. Assuming it's in our budget for New Station 4, when would we have to possibly renew another lease?
There is potential, but right now, if depending on what happens after this discussion, there's 2 schedules that will meet this. But potentially, we could have to do a month or a month to month
lease. Okay, all right. Just
Hey, anybody else? All right. Thank you, Chief. I think we're all okay with it. Next up, Parks and Rec annual update, Ms. Turner.
Okay, I'll leave it on. Thank you, Brendan. This morning, we're just bringing to you an update, and it's timely with our it's Parks and Recreation Month. So we're coming to you at the end, kind of wrapping up our month here with that. Our summer camp our theme for this summer is Cruising Through Summer. So I'm kind of sticking with that with our theme for our presentation today, Charting Our Course. I apologize, I'm a little hoarse, so hopefully you can still hear me okay. How do you work this one? Did you do that, Mike? Okay. I like to include at the beginning of our presentations, and just to let you know, I sent it, I believe you received it electronically because it's got a lot of pictures and colors, so I just didn't want to use that up. So you should have it electronically as well. If not, we can get it to you. This just includes our journey, the purpose of our journey, why we do what we do. Just like New Kent County as a whole, we do it for the people. We try to provide services that are affordable, that are equitable, that are diverse, and just have quality recreation services and facilities. This thing's really sensitive. Okay, I'm gonna get you to do it. You wanna do it for me? Just hitting on a little bit of our core values. I'm not going to go through all of those there, but we include these in our budget presentation each year. And also just when we do our own planning within our department, every service we provide ties into at least one of these core value areas that we have. And we just have a few fun pictures on there of our kids. And I'm real proud of the 2 little ones there at our summer camp. They said we needed to start every day with saying the Pledge of Allegiance. So that's just a picture of them. Okay. Just before we get into charting our course, we have some resources for our journey. This year, our 2022 Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission, our chair is Debbie Richards. Many of you know her. She's involved in the Educational Foundation and some other areas. And then our co-chair is Craig Pierce. And we've been able to meet some this year. We did cancel our last meeting for July because we had a big baseball tournament in town, and our liaison to the board, Mr. Evelyn, was involved in that. And also our chair was out at the park for a good amount of time checking things out. So we're glad to have someone that's involved in getting out there. On the right-hand side is just a list of our department organization, where our team is led by Justin, the Assistant County Administrator. We have our Recreation Specialist, which is a position we've had vacant since January of this year, and we filled that about 3 weeks ago, which was perfect timing because it was summer camp time. So we're excited to have Haley Ashford. She's a graduate of New Kent County High School and Randolph College. We've also added, if you've been out to the park, you have probably met Todd. Todd Mensmoyer is overseeing the operations at Pine Fork and trying to get things straight there. And then there's just a list of the other folks in our department. Okay. Go back one. All right, we always like to highlight our volunteers because people are like, how do you get done what you do? I'm not going to lie, our volunteers are the backbone of our department. Without them, we do have disruptions in our service. The Eastern Virginia Mountain Bike Association is an MOU that the Board of Supervisors has with that group. They are instrumental with Warren Eye Nature Trail. I don't know if you can see it that well, but I mean, they don't just go through there and rake up things and snip little things. They cut down trees. They keep our park open, our trails going. If it's something that falls out of their scope or their liability of our MOU, they do contact us, but that doesn't happen too often. We also had Fred Matthews, who he's named himself our trail ambassador. He's out there. Ms. Page is shaking her head. You have the Grove, so you know Mr. Fred. He's instrumental as well. He's out there hiking at least 3 or 4 times a week, letting us know of any issues that are going on out there. We do have our fall and spring programs that we offer. We have our soccer coaches. We had 16 volunteers in the fall, 18 in the spring. And then with our winter basketball program this year, we're dealing with 32 volunteer coaches. And these numbers could go up. We could actually have more teams, but it's beyond what we can provide volunteers and sometimes space-wise, more on basketball than soccer. This is just an additional list to let y'all see some of the fun things. I don't know. Mr. Lockwood, you're in that one. Just some partnerships that we do with different clubs, the New Kent High School Beta Club, and also the New Youth Organization that Mr. Hathaway sits on and Mr. Swartout, I believe. That group is kind of risen to the occasion. We contact them when we need folks to volunteer, and they come out. They helped up with several pop-up events that we have. Mr. Lockwood, the one I'm referring to there is Earth Day. The Clean County Committee came out and did some education, but we also had the schools there as well. Wakey Howard has not disappeared. He's involved with the Blue Knights, and they've actually given us 2 benches for Pine Fork Park and several throughout the county. And then there's a few other folks there that we work with. The Community Connections Program, that's court-ordered community service. So we have had a little bit more of that, but we are limited on what we can take with that program because we have to supervise them. So timing is really important with that program because we have to stay with them all the time. Okay. And just our capital resources being our operating budget for our journey. For FY22, we're still working with finance on just cleaning up a few things there. So we won't actually have all of our hard numbers on that till we have the final budget transfers, which I think some were done today and things like that. I will tell you our projected revenue did fall short this year. It fell short last year. A lot of that has to do with the services that we have, but I can tell you our expenditures, I don't want to say we turned back money, what's the official financial term, but the money wasn't spent either. So those correlate with one another, our expenditures and our revenues. And just after the morning that we've had, I don't know if FY23 is going to be much better. We are hoping to have some return on our programs, but we're having COVID fly through camp again. So when kids are out for a week, we don't charge them. So that's, we're working there and attending some trainings on recovering from COVID and how Parks and Rec departments can recover from that. The percentage that's right there is 23.6% sitting out. That's kind of the national average of the return of revenue that a Parks and Rec department has to their expenditures. Typically, before COVID, we ran around 75 to 80% return, which was awesome. Now we're kind of hanging more at that nationwide, still above that, but more to 40% right now. So, and we did offer, there's a little picture there, we did offer some pop-up programs. We've really just trying to be back out in the community and do some outreach and different things like that. When we go to churches, when we do that, we're not charging for those programs, so we don't, I guess, just our side of the mission, just more outreach right now versus revenue generation. All right, for fun, I threw in some coordinates there. That's for you, Justin. I know you like this stuff. Anybody, those coordinates are actually for, you can go to the next one, our 11809 New Kent Highway. We've been working with coordinates on the kids, so I won't lie, they helped me look them up, so they might not be correct. But these are the coordinates for our office, and we're out all over the community, as far as Quinton Community Center down to Warreneye, but our office is really our hub. That's our location for our customer service. That's where we come back and we debrief and go over things. In the last few months, we came to you, I think back before December, in the board, you were able to adopt and allocate funds for a new civic rec registration for us. It ties into our county website. So far, knock on wood, so good. We've had some externally, great. Internally, we've had a few things just getting to know the system. In IT, Mike, a great announcement. You can turn off RecTrack next week. That'll actually help our technology department because it's so old and antiquated. So we're getting ready to turn that off. But if you haven't been on there, it's a great way to register for programs, and there's still, isolated programs where we have to go and help folks register online. They can still come in the office. They can still mail it in. Just briefly about customer service, we did send out our annual before and after school surveys, our annual survey, our sports league surveys. I will tell you the return on those was less this year. I don't know if people are just kind of tired of doing that stuff. So we base a lot of our feedback over the last year just on word of mouth and phone calls. But the surveys that we did receive, we either received very good or extremely positive responses on our response time. Like every department here and every department everywhere, communication remains our biggest challenge internally and externally. And the more programs that we add, whether it be group me's, reminds, the more programs we have, it seems like the more communication avenues that are there, because we're checking, about 5 different programs a day to see if we have messages. So that's kind of challenging. If y'all have ever seen Parks and Rec, has anybody seen that sitcom? I just put a meme there saying, I haven't checked my email all morning, and at this point I'm too afraid to look, which I know as board members you are sometimes too. So we've been trying to communicate that we'll get back as soon as possible to folks, but overall customer service is still going pretty well. Our next set of coordinates is actually for one of the schools, New Kent Elementary School. We continue to, it should be pictures of before school kids once you get there. We continue to partner with the schools on the use of their facilities. Is it there, Mike? He has to fix stuff for me sometimes, so that's why I gave it to him. There we go. Okay. So we are, for this past year, we did run a before and after school program for kindergarten through 5th grade. We ended up in June 2022 with that. We started the year with a lot of mitigation for COVID, and we ended it not quite as strong as we started. Masks were optional towards the end of the year, but I'm hoping we're not seeing a resurface of that and having to start that same way again, but we'll do what we need to do. Our participants are getting a little bit more challenging that we have in the program. They're requiring some more support. We're dealing with things as far, even elopement running away from our program. We're dealing with behavioral issues. We're dealing with depression, anxiety. We're dealing, we have to have DSS come in. They did our mandatory reporter training. So just the shift in that program versus what we did with that program 15 years ago is very different. It used to be that fun babysitting kind of thing. Not anymore. It's very challenging, and so we're looking at how to do that, and also the shortages. Jason and I both filled in at before school all year long at New Kent Elementary School at 6:45 in the morning. So I'm hoping that the $15 minimum wage that we adopted will recruit and retain. I can tell you right now, it's definitely helping us with retention of our current counselors from last year, because they're like, they were at $10, $11 an hour, and we're able to keep them now because of that. But we're still looking for folks, because we are adding Quinton Elementary School. We have budgeted for that. Just because we budgeted for it doesn't necessarily mean we have the folks for that program yet. So currently, folks who are participating in that program are signing a waiver of understanding, yet another waiver, understanding that we are not operating that program at a particular school until we have the staff. Because I can tell you, with Jason and I doing that in the morning, it pulled away from our other duties, and we have another responsibility to the county. So we're not starting that until we have the staff at those programs. And right now, we have enough people, participants, to do all of those programs, New Kent, Watkins, and Quinton Elementary School after school. Quinton Elementary School before school only has about 10 kids interested right now. So we'll work from there. And I can't go without saying my Miss Annie. If y'all know Annie Lewis, she hit her 10 years with the county. If you don't know Miss Annie, she's awesome. Role model for our kids and for our younger staff as well. Summer Camp 2021, we did have camp last summer. We had pods for that camp. We had strong mitigation for that. We operated 7 weeks, Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 5:30. Heavily, good percentage of county staff who utilized that program. This summer, we opened it more to just not county staff and emergency personnel. It's opened back up to the public. As of right now, we've had 113 campers, but we still have 4 weeks to go. So we'll pick up some more folks there. We're doing pods with activity sharing. As of today, we're back to pods to eliminate maybe some spread of that COVID going through there. The next thing we have are our programs. And I always like to point this out and take a minute. People call us, they think we run the Falcons, they think we run the baseball group. We do not operate those programs. We do operate the fall soccer and the spring soccer program, and we also operate the basketball. Everything with those programs fall on New Kent County Parks and Recreation. I just put an example of camps that we're hosting. Right now, we're hosting a soccer camp. So with those types of things, we handle the registration, but not the operations of that program. The one that you as supervisors would probably get the most phone calls about are our co-sponsored, affiliated, and travel groups. That's the New Kent Youth Association baseball, the Falcons football. We have girls softball, the Giants baseball, basketball, and now field hockey. The New Kent Sharks soccer, which is a little just starting out, and Coyotes volleyball. So what the county has to do with those programs, and Jason, feel free to add, they need to be very similar to the mission that they are open to anybody to play. They're not supposed to discriminate against disabilities or different things, and we can help them with accommodations if we need that. We provide that to them. I know football had a child who had a previous brain injury, and we were able to say, help them look through things and decide if that child could play and if we could adapt it. They are supposed to be at least 80% New Kent residents. If they go over that and they accept 20% non-residents, they can receive a fee from the county for that non-resident rate. And then they also are required to have background checks on their coaches. So those are the things that we require of them. At some point, we might want to look at these as a separate discussion to see if the county wants to, one, continue to to have these groups if we want to require more of those groups. But like I said, that's going to be a different conversation than this report right here. Moving on to programs, just a few pictures. Like I said, it's really fun to we return to some of our traditional programming, preschool, line dancing, Zumba. Our sheriff's office was the recipient of our quilting group. They meet up at the Quinton Community Center. Those ladies love that group up there. But we try not to duplicate services. So sometimes people will call us and say, well, why aren't you offering yoga? We want chair yoga. The library's doing chair yoga. We don't have enough right now to compete against those type of programs. So we meet with the library to see what they're offering. We meet with other groups so we don't duplicate those programs. Special events over the last year. Thank you for y'all's support last July. It's been a year already that we were cutting the ribbon. We were having dog park parties. We were having playground popsicles, meeting with the neighbors of Pine Fork Park. We stayed in communication with them. They're still, interested. We get phone calls. They're like our unofficial park police up there. So we were able, those were great events, except the first one when it started thundering right after y'all cut the ribbon. Then we had to run out of there. But we got done what we needed to. We were also able to host, I think some of you were able to attend. I had to put Wanda and Amanda and Krista and Wanda and Rodney in there. We had a fall festival at the park. That was the first big event we did. It was well received. Matter of fact, it was over what we anticipated. We are planning that event again this year. We have the date on that, but we're looking more at our cultural events permit and we were very fortunate the sheriff's office was doing bike training that night. And so they were there to help us mitigate traffic and things like that. Just a few snippets. The Grand Illumination continues to be, we call that Mr. Hathaway's special event. That was the 8th one. This year will be number 9. We plan to have that event. We're kicking off, I think, in 2 weeks from now. If you have any feedback for that, we'll welcome that. We had our daddy-daughter dance, which capped out at about 125 people. If you know JD in the Public Works Department, Public Utilities, he dressed up. He looks a little different there with his daughter. We got a kick out of that. And I was actually on medical leave, and Holly Nagy, who's our administrative assistant, went above and beyond and implemented that entire event for us and did a wonderful job. More coordinates. These coordinates are for Pine Fork Park. We're showing Warren I first. I just want to give you some of the uses over the last year. Warren I started out with COVID, lots of people. It's still trending pretty high there. Cub Scout groups, Girl Scout groups are using it. Cross-country teams, not only our cross-country team, but West Point, Eastern End of James City. It has regional use. When I'm out there, we like to stop and ask people where they're from. They're coming from all over for mountain biking. Because they said it's a gym. You wouldn't think that it has the challenges that it needs, but it's there and people really enjoy it. So like I said, we're real fortunate to have the MOU with the mountain bike group to work on that. The historic school, the use over the last year mainly has been home to the Falcons football and cheerleading. It continues to be practice fields for youth baseball. Do girls softball utilize? I don't think they utilize historic school fields. And it continues to be the middle school baseball and softball competition fields. We do share that property. The middle school and the elementary school use it as their outdoor field space for PE classes. And also, I think the gym is utilized pretty heavily by the middle school because when they put 4 classes in the gym, it's crazy. So they usually walk 2 classes over to utilize the gym if we don't have anything in there. Quinton Park, New Kent Girls Softball uses that a little bit. They have their own private place in Woodhaven. The walking path continues to be utilized there. Quinton Park is still heavily used for our shelter rentals because folks just like it there. Pine Fork has had a lot of baseball going on, so people for their parties still wanted to stay at Quinton Park. And then the basketball court as well is used there. We do have temporary pickleball. If you've been up there, there is a unit with a combination lock on it, and people can get it out, but it's not ideal. The net's quite heavy to get out. It takes about 15 minutes to put together. By the time they get it up, people are coming to play basketball. Fortunately, we haven't had any major run-ins, but we have had some use issues when pickleball's there and basketball wants to come in. The Quinton Community Center continues to be used for rentals and some of our lower attending programs just because of the parking there. I know that we are going to need to Quinton Community Center. It needs to be painted, floors need to be redone, that kind of thing. But overall, that's doing pretty well with our rentals are picking back up there. Pine Fork Park, people keep asking me what the address is for that because it just doesn't sound like a New Kent address. So I just threw it on there for you. It's Bristlecone Boulevard. That opened, like I said, in July 2021. The use really picked up this past spring and just ended last week. We did have soccer out there this spring. We did have baseball. We did have some youth tournaments that were held out there. The walking path is used a lot. I see a lot of dogs because you're not supposed to have them at Quinton Park due to the proximity to different things there. And just to let you know, we have an upcoming meeting with our staff next week to go over the operations of the last year. So if you have any feedback for that, let us know. And then we're actually meeting with the Youth Association Baseball Group on August 15th at their board meeting to review anything from the last year. So I will send those dates to you if you're interested. I know Mr. Evelyn is our liaison, but Ms. Page, it falls in your district. So we'll send that out if you want to attend any of those meetings. Transitioning to just a quick heads up on our FY22, our vehicle acquisition, we're still waiting on a vehicle. Every time we order one, we get a call that they're now out of stock, so that's been carried forward. Our strategic plan that we have, and I'm still debating on this one, and I've talked to Justin a little bit. We've got our strategic plan for the county, and I talked to that group about piggybacking off of that, but it's not quite enough work for them to do. So if I can get staffing straight, I may kind of work on that internally or try to get an intern to work with me from VCU on that. We do have some remaining things from Pine Fork Park. We did hold off on purchasing all the equipment for the concession stand because the baseball group went with food trucks. However, that's a discussion we're having with our commission as well as the board, how we want to see that building utilized, and if the Youth Association wants to continue with food trucks. We've gotten negative and positive, but we built this building to be used, so we might put it out to bid to see if somebody wants to run that concession stand. Because from what I understand, the average family spending $40 to $50 on a food truck a night out there. And I don't know about you guys, but that's not real affordable. So we'll work with our commission and you on that and any feedback you have. What we're looking into right now is trail paving. We're working with making sure those quotes, we put a contingency in there. We're hoping that that's still going to work. If not, that's a project we're working on immediately. The electronic sign at Quinton Community Center. And then we're working on some improvements. If you've ever been to Warren I, the entry gets a big, people mess up their alignment on their vehicles. So we're trying to work and fix that a little bit and some park improvements. Okay, let's speed it up. The next coordinates are actually, they were for this building right here because these are things that we're either going to need direction from our administration, some guidance, or from our board. These are some opportunities that we have. We're continuing to grow. We're on the health, I think Matt leave, and Chief OPET. We're sitting on a health committee for New Kent County, and the senior adult population is still still rising and going up. I think it's wonderful that you have adopted the historic school. I think that'll be utilized to do some programmings, but we're very heavy on our youth programming, but we don't want to forget, it'll sound like Ms. Page, that broken record. We still need that emphasis, not just on recreation, but looking at the needs of the community where they're going to hospitals. We've been asked, do we have assisted living? You know, I'm like, we have the Groves, and that's not what people are looking for necessarily. So hopefully we can continue to work with that committee and the planning department as well as you on addressing those needs of the county. I know the county has looked at a facility and space needs, which I think some of those are being addressed. I would tell you I am blessed that y'all are adopting the historic school project because our office has I don't even know if you can fix it up. But that will address some needs, hopefully, to open up for storage and some things for the county once that's done. The shared use of our schools and public space, Quinton Elementary School, if anybody, I know some of you have already been up there, we're setting up a time because Parks and Rec actually has a little spot to put our stuff up at the new elementary school. Our opportunities that we also have our shift in traditional programming. We're looking at, do we need to get away from the before and after school programming and shift towards other types of outdoor programming or putting our emphasis other places. Our increase in affiliate and travel groups, I can tell you we're still in the day and age where somebody might be upset or might not want to benefit from a rec group anymore, so they start their own travel group. There's the group Journey is building a complex. They have started, I believe they're doing some rentals with us right now for the Arsenal team until their complex is built. So we've got some different dynamics in there that I'm just not sure how that's all going to play out, but I think we need to prepare ourselves as a county. What is your goal? How do we want to utilize the parks? Do we want sports tourism? Do you want us to promote that? Do we want to keep it for the county residents? That turns into whether money or, revenue generating type things or keeping it as is with rentals after that. Like I mentioned earlier, our participants in our programs are just increasing with different needs. The shift, I know you've all seen it, just in participant and societal expectations are very different than they used to be. The demands from the community, I've been here 16 years and it's definitely shifted from what the expectations are. And our safety and EAP review. We've worked with the sheriff's office more the last year, the fire department the last year. We've had lots of different issues. We're increasing special events. So we're really trying to look at those safety and EAP. We've already worked with Sergeant Brandon Jenkins with the schools. We're following the same protocols with our programs for doing intruder drills and different things like that. So even those things where we used to just go out and have a big party in the middle of the field for a special event has definitely taken on a new role and responsibility for us. The next one I had navigating our course, just question marks, just future conversations with you. We're working on that strategic plan. At what level do we want to implement that? I know y'all assigned a comprehensive plan focus group, is that correct? So we can work and work with our administration on that. Our services, if we're going to have to prioritize those, like I mentioned earlier, some things will possibly need to be cut from our service, or it might not fit the scope of what we need the department to be at this point. Have the sports tourism on there. Our role in facility operations, there's sometimes a gray area with us in the general services department of who, just because we operate it, what needs to be the role of the maintenance of those facilities. And then I will leave these just for your viewing later, just some national statistics. You can flip through that one. And then on the last one, that's just our involvement in examples of different places in the community. I don't like pictures, but I'm in like all three of those. But we were real proud of at JMU. We did receive an award, a state award, for our renovation of the band room and the implementation of a program last year that supported county staff as well as county school staff and emergency personnel in the county, that we did virtual support program during the day for their education, and then in between we did recreation program and social skills. So, and also putting in the internet and different things. So we were excited to get that state recognition. And that's a picture of our current team down there. We just did that yesterday. So next slide is the end. And sorry to talk fast, but I know we're a little over. So at this point, any questions you have before we move into a pickleball presentation? Yes, I think I emailed that to you, and you also wanted to know meeting. I sent it while you were already in your meeting. I just looked at it and it was too much color and paper. So unless you have your computer with you, you would not have received that yet. And does anybody else want the dates of those meetings, or just Mr. Evelyn and Ms. Page? Okay. All right. And one of the requests that we have had over the last year that our commission has recommended as well, I know that several of you received calls, it's the pickleball courts. We do believe we can fit that at Pine Fork Park. And Jason has, do you have the copies? We have the copies for you of, they were electronic as well, but we do have, are they together? Are they two separate?
No, they're both put together over there.
Okay. It's attached to the agenda if you need it, but here's a hard copy. Yes, exact same thing. We just weren't sure what people would have. Oh, I've got one right here. I don't. You're good? Okay. So our commission was asked to recommend this project, and then we have the numbers here, and I'm going to let Jason present that.
Good morning, board. I contacted a company that the county has worked with before. They're the same company that helped build the existing new tennis courts at the high school. They're also very popular throughout the state. It's called Tennis Courts Incorporated. They gave me two basic options. There's an option to either go with asphalt for the pickleball courts or to go with concrete. The asphalt is less expensive than the concrete. There's some pros and cons for both. If you look at the breakdown, I believe the first one is the concrete, and the price for the concrete is a little over $270,000. This also, we're looking at building 4 pickleball courts. This isn't just one. The pickleball courts would be fully fenced in and everything.
4?
Yeah, it's 4 total. The positives about concrete, they're stating it will not crack, and it has more of a lifespan of about 40 years. It still needs to be resurfaced and painted every 4 to 6 years, which is about a $10,000 cost for that. The asphalt, it will crack eventually. Cracks will need to be repaired every 4 to 6 years. Along with the repair, they also need to be resurfaced and painted every 4 to 6 years. So, like I said, the cost is about $10,000 just for the resurfacing, and the price that they gave for cracks, it's about $26 to $27 per linear feet. So, if you had a 25-foot crack, it's going to be $2,500. You know, but the one good thing, it still lasts about 20 to 25 years, and then he said if you had to do a demolition and reconstruction, it's about a 40 to 50% decrease, less than the initial construction costs. So those are the two options. Some of the positive things about users, asphalt is a lot easier on your joints. You know, and we're looking at more of active, age group that's using it. Concrete is very hard. I don't know if you've ever played basketball on a concrete court. It's rough on your joints. So those are kind of the two options and the cost. And the asphalt cost was a little over $111,000. So if y'all have any questions, please let me know.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Faith.
So are you going to seek pricing from any other companies, or just this one company?
This company is under a state contract currently, so we can contact some other companies. A lot of the companies I've talked to,
some of them don't want to do it.
Yeah, and I've talked to a lady yesterday. She was a pickleball ambassador for the USA Pickleball. And she stated that there was a couple other groups, but a lot of it had to do a lot of subcontracting and trying to piecemeal the construction together. And if we kind of know when we worked with subcontracting with Pine Fork Park, I mean, we were 2 years, late on the completion of it. This would be a turnkey state contract option through this company that has done work for us.
I'll say with the
tennis courts in the past.
Did they do work at the tennis courts at the high school?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody have any questions?
I don't have any questions, but thank you for finally considering this. Now I think we got every age group. We got a 30-some-year-old at my church. They asked me when I want to plan a tournament.
It's still,
and I'm like, if it's not senior citizen, I just can't handle it right now. But
It's still trending up.
Absolutely.
Chesterfield County and different places. I kind of giggled at the 20 to 25 years. I'm wondering in another 20 years, what will be the new
it'll be
trend that
something
stays
else,
for a little while. So we do continue to receive calls. Actually, in the Groves, we receive so many calls that they have like a little group, and the one person calls us now.
Well, I have good news. The Groves is going to have their own
and
pickleball courts.
they're going to have their own 2 pickleball courts,
Yes,
which
they
they
are.
said are not enough, but they want to partner with us to do tournaments and different things.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
But it is a need that not
Absolutely.
a need. It is a need. When we talked about addressing the senior adult community and our active aging, we have received many calls about it, and we've kind of done some work. It is not just a trend; it's kind of hanging out. And we have some, I think, people who would take some ownership of the regulation of those courts in those neighborhoods, and some people. So there's that information for you.
Thank you.
Just let us know if you have any questions or need further information.
I know when I'm out, I've been talking to Rutan groups or different groups throughout the county, and when I mentioned the possibility of pickleball courts, I mean, people get really excited, and it does give the opportunity. I know Ms. Page is always talking about us older people at the park giving them something to do. So
do they want to donate, and we can put a sponsor banner up?
I doubt it.
Okay, worth a try.
But I really think it's something we really should consider moving forward. Mr. Steers.
Yes, and from day one, I've asked for a pool, and I can't believe you guys are not getting the texts I do. This guy's at a kids swim meet in Antioch, 140 kids on the team, at least half are from New Kent County.
Absolutely.
Hope we can set one up at a later phase in Pine Fork Park, and I said, ain't gonna happen.
I will be more than happy at any point to discuss some of the conversations that we've had and some numbers that I've shared and found.
There's no place in the county where a child can go and learn to swim.
I think
and we're surrounded by water.
I think our best bet is to probably enter some type of private-public partnership at this point. I'm not sure of one, either to build it. We've seen that be very successful where maybe a YMCA builds it, the county operates it, or the county builds it, and another group comes in. It's very expensive to build, but the operating costs that I've received from aquatic groups is astronomical.
I'm sure.
It's really crazy. And in the location, and I don't know if we at one point had talked about Royal New Kent but I think the neighborhood over there uses it so much now. So
you could charge family memberships.
If they would enter into that agreement with us, yeah. That's your district, right?
Well, there you go.
Well, I mean, I know families are paying $500.
Oh, they would pay it. They would pay it.
$800 a year annual membership to the pool.
Well, our high school swim team doesn't swim in the county.
Right.
There's definitely a need for it. It's just where would you put it, and we have to commit, like I said, to astronomical operating costs. And you would charge memberships, but when I talk to other Parks and Rec professionals, they said it barely breaks even. So we would definitely have to do. Now we have looked at the splash pad, which I think that's not a pool. That's just a water feature.
Thank you for that.
We definitely would have to do a lot of homework on pool operations because it's the liabilities and you have to make everything accessible and the chemicals, and it's like our playgrounds. We can't just put in a residential pool. We have to go commercial.
Well, you see what happened I was with the sheriff in Chesterfield County. They took like 20, 25 kids and parents to DCU.
Yep. So, we would be...
Because of chemicals.
We would, it's definitely a need, and I just don't... we have to decide, is the county the one that wants to adopt that project, or if we want that private
into a
public,
partnership.
Someone to to build and things like that. So just, I guess, that's something, we've been looking at that, Mr. Sears, with you for years now, and it just, I can tell you with what we have right now, we wouldn't be able to operate it.
Well, I believe that, but it's
not just from a financial standpoint,
right.
but just from a personnel standpoint.
Well, if you would, just look into partnership
if
with
that's
the
something y'all wanna
YMCA
see.
or some group or something.
Isn't that a part of the phase 2 or 3?
That was There, you're talking about Pine Fork Park. There was talk. It did a not the preliminary drawings. What am I coming up with? In the master plan, the conceptual plan had a indoor pool, but there were never any adoption of that. That was purely conceptual at that point. Tennis courts, basketball, all that was part of the master plan.
I totally agree. It's gonna have to be some kind of partnership, whether the county builds it and somebody else runs it. I've talked to Henrico and Chesterfield, and I mean, it is the liability and all of that would fall on the absolute districts. I mean, the locality, and then with our Parks and Rec team and number of employees and needing lifeguards, and I just think it has to be a partnership, whether it be YMCA, YWCA, or somebody like that. Maybe we could talk to them if they're interested.
I can talk to the direct Henrico County in East End off Laburnum. They have an East End Rec Center. The county built the pool, but the YMCA operates it.
Correct. I talked to Mr. Thornton about that. And so I just think that that's our best route for our locality. Just my thoughts.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I think this, I see this was back in March. You got this quote, so I'm sure prices.
I talked to him the last 2 days, and he said it's still the pricing is correct.
Okay.
He did suggest to add a 10 to 15% contingency to the price, though.
So just in case there was any
problems.
field work or any level.
Well, let's give, if the board's okay, let's look over this and bring it up for discussion, maybe a decision at an August meeting.
You want to give them the price of the
And Mr. Chair, if
contingency?
it's okay, because I know 2 different companies that's doing other pickleball, if I could check with them and maybe work with Kim and Jason on.
Definitely give us the names. These are just very, just because of procurement, they're under state
These are
contract.
localities.
And
I mean,
yeah, sure.
Yeah,
so.
it'd be nice to have something.
You know, just to
Definitely
say
give
we
us
got a
give it to
comparison.
us, and we'll contact them and everything.
And we can ask
Just-
about, do they subcontract it, you know, in
Oh, I'm not
timetables
doing
and
it.
things.
I'm giving it to you.
Yeah, we'll do
I
it.
don't even know what to ask.
All right, thank you all for the update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we don't have any other business.
One quick item.
We don't have any other business. Huh? Okay.
This is back in February, actually on February 23rd, the board approved an agreement with EPR EPR PC for consultant services for our comprehensive planning process that has begun. What we didn't do at that point was appropriate funding for the contract. So you have here is a motion to appropriate funding for the approved contract amount for our consulting project. I am proposing that this money come from our Colonial Downs Restricted Capital Fund line item to fund this project, which will be a 2-year project.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hathaway. Any discussion? Mr. Lockwood, you have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to appropriate $195,762 from the Colonial Downs Restricted Capital Fund to line item 11110100-403170 professional services for consulting services procured for the revenue and update review and update of the county's comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Mr. Lockwood. Ms. Stanger, will you call the members?
Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page?
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Mr. Lockwood, you have something?
I just one public service announcement. On August 6th, the Proclaiming Grace Outreach will be holding their 15th annual Jenna Bash from 11 o'clock in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. And they will be at a new location this year at Life Point Christian Church at 8841 Richmond Road in Toano. So if you're not at the county fair, come on down and have a good time.
Thank you, Ms. Lockwood. Any other?
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move to go into closed session pursuant to section 2.2-3711A.29 of the Code of Virginia to discuss the award of a public contract and the terms and scope of such contract where discussion in an open session would adversely affect the negotiating strategy of the county. This motion involves the Fire Station Number 4 construction project. Also, Mr. Chairman, I move to go into closed session pursuant to section 2.2-3711A.3 of the Code of Virginia for discussion and consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the county involving a future Fire Station Number 6.
Thank you, Mr. Tiller. Stanger, will you poll the members?
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page? Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye.